The Nintendo Switch 2 is a topic that gets a lot of people feeling a lot of things. We are obviously in a very exciting, mysterious time when it comes to Nintendo as a company and when it comes to the state of the Nintendo Switch as it is right now, because 2023 is a very exciting year with a huge game like Zelda on the horizon, but also a very curious year because after that, with the exception of Pikmin 4, which will definitely be a Game of the Year contender just for me personally, there's nothing else confirmed that we really know about to be excited for. And because of that, we know that a lot of people on the internet and on YouTube, which does of course include myself because I haven't shut up about this topic for many years, and I'm proud to say I've been discussing it for so long. I think it's a very fun, interesting topic, and a lot of you guys seem to care and find it very interesting as well. But because of that, a lot of people have been focused on if Nintendo is making room for an imminent announcement or reveal or official confirmation on the Nintendo Switch 2, which, as I've said in previous videos, could be another hybrid Switch, it could be a Switch Pro kind of thing, it could be a home console, it could be a weird quirky idea that we haven't thought of, it could be finally Nintendo doing like a VR headset thing, who knows? But again, the idea of Nintendo Switch 2 just kind of encompasses all potential future hardware that Nintendo will reveal for their next generation machine. And as 2023 continues to truck along, we are just seeing more and more people come around to the idea that their next console reveal is probably around the corner in some way, shape, or form. And I've mentioned this before, to me, around the corner could be having it revealed in the next 6 to 12 months and having it even release in the next 6 to 18 months. And with the conversation growing larger and larger and people making more predictions and theories and just discussing it, some people discussing it, I think, responsibly, some people maybe not so much, but at the end of the day, that's fine. I'm not the YouTube police or the internet police, so everyone's going to do what they're going to do, and it is what it is. But again, this conversation is growing, more people are believing it, and so we're seeing a lot of very strong emotional reactions. Now, I've said before that I myself have been dealing with very strong emotional reactions to the idea because I started talking about this happening way back in 2020. And again, I didn't predict just the idea of Nintendo making new hardware because that was true from the day that the Switch launched. I very much said 2022 or 23 is probably when we would see the thing revealed or released or something happen significant around it. So I've been seeing a lot of people have very strong feelings about the fact that the Nintendo Switch 2, you shouldn't talk about it, you shouldn't think about it, it's never going to happen, Nintendo's not going to reveal the thing until 2027. All of these different things, and now that more people are starting to have the same conversations, we're seeing an even larger contingent of people push back very emotionally about the fact that they just don't want anyone even thinking about the idea of a Switch 2. And so I already know with this video and this exact topic, I'm already going to be inadvertently pushing a lot of people's buttons. It's really not my intent. I just think that it's an interesting and kind of important conversation to have as we're in this period, March 2023, with a very unique year ahead of us. Again, we've got one of the biggest games of the generation coming with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but then almost a complete mystery after that for the rest of the year. Again, I'm not trying to overshadow Pikmin 4 because I think that game is going to be amazing, but it's not a super high tier release like Zelda is. And so the main thesis, as you could probably tell from the title of this video, is whether or not it's even okay, quote unquote okay, for people on the internet, content creators, YouTubers, internet personalities who might be just known for Twitter conversations or whatever it is, or even just regular fans and commenters and people like a lot of you guys out there, is it even okay for people to be discussing the idea of the Switch 2? Now, before I get into it, and you probably know where I'm going to go with it, but before I even get into that, most importantly, I think it's important for everyone to acknowledge that it is okay for anyone to have their own opinions and preferences about this whole idea. Should people talk about a Switch 2 or should they not talk about it? Should they be excited for or desire a Switch 2 or should they be completely satisfied with the Switch and don't even think about a Switch 2? There's really nothing wrong with having your own actual opinion and preference, but I think that the point of the question is whether or not it's okay for other people to feel differently than you do, right? And if you're somebody who says, no Switch 2 talk, I don't even want to hear next-gen Nintendo anything, then you get to just feel that and do that and experience the internet through the lens that you choose. But other people, like myself, YouTubers, whatever, I think everyone has the right to themselves feel differently. And if they want to be excited for a Switch 2, or talk about a Switch 2, or predict and theorize about new Nintendo hardware at any time, I think, provided no one's outright lying to anyone on purpose, I think it's all harmless, and it really shouldn't be a big deal for anyone. I've been having a lot of conversations and reacting to comments on my YouTube videos and threads on Twitter and whatnot for, again, about 3 years now, since I myself started really kind of talking about this as an idea back in 2020. And in fact, I even kind of referenced it on one of my most recent videos as well. And it's the idea that getting excited for new hardware and new console generations and shifts in power and all of these things, man, it's been a part of the gaming industry pretty much since the beginning. And especially when we look at the current gaming industry that was really built on the back of Nintendo reviving the dead gaming industry with the NES back in 1985 and 86 here in North America. But basically the mid-80s, when the NES came out and the Famicom in Japan, right? That was the revival, the beginning of the resurgence of a gaming industry that died and crashed in 1983. And a lot of the younger folks out there who I think push back the most against the idea of talking about or discussing next-gen Nintendo hardware and Switch 2, I think are the folks that are too young to have experienced or really understood the truth of that. And maybe a lot of you guys out there who are in that position and are that young and inexperienced, maybe you know the history that the gaming industry crashed in 83 and then kind of came back in the mid-80s. But to have really lived it, I think kind of puts it in a different perspective. And I think, we're in that industry. Like I said, everything we're doing, even what Microsoft and Sony are doing, companies that weren't even making games back when the NES released, this is the revived industry that never stopped once Nintendo revived it with the NES in 1985, right? That's what I mean when I say we're currently in the gaming era that's built on the back of what the NES did back in the mid-80s. And of course, myself, as a 42-year-old man who was gaming back then, I was playing on an Atari 2600 at home, right, on a black and white TV sometimes, that we had just a very little black and white TV, mostly on a regular color TV. But playing an Atari 2600 as like a 3 and 4-year-old little boy, and then my older brother brought home an NES when that came out, and I would have been 5 or 6 years old or so when that happened. And so I've lived through all of the console generation jumps and the power jumps from 8-bit to 16-bit to 32-bit and disc-based gaming and consoles, 64-bit, all the way into the more current stuff like the 6th generation, 7th, 8th gen, and everything we're playing now with PS5 and Series X. I've experienced all that, and I've myself even lived through all these other players that came and went, like the TurboGrafx 16 and the Philips CDI and the 3DO and my personal fan favorite Atari Jaguar, and other Atari consoles. I had a Lynx. My younger brother had a Game Gear. We went through the Game Boy stuff. I mean, this is just a long kind of resume I'm listing out to say I've experienced the excitement and the freshness of new console generations my whole life for 4 decades. And so how this relates to the Switch 2 conversation is like I was saying, I've had conversations with people pushing back for a few years on this idea on my Twitter and on my YouTube, and it's me trying to remind folks that this is normal, okay? It's normal to experience a console generation or a console device for a period of time, and if you like it, then you're enjoying it for that period of time, but eventually it's going to come to the end of its run. Even if it's successful, like the Switch is still very successful, time moves on. Companies move on. Freshness is a part of the technology industry, and gaming is in the technology industry. So at some point, you get excited about the idea of when will Nintendo jump to the new thing. Switch is great. Switch is still selling. Amazing games are releasing, but it can't last forever. And while none of us know what Nintendo is doing, and I've never claimed to know what they're doing, and neither are any other people out there talking about it as well, no one's claiming to know. But when you think about it, you theorize, you speculate, you analyze the precarious situation Nintendo finds themselves in now, with PS5 and Series X on the market for 2 years at this point, it's pretty acceptable to be like, hey, I think the Switch 2 is probably going to be coming soon. And we can analyze what 2023 looks like and say, maybe it's going to happen this year. Whether or not I was right in 2020, that's not the point. I don't even care if I was right. I mean, I'll be happy if I was right, but it's less about that and just more about, man, it's time for the next thing. And so I find it to be, again, with the exception of people outright lying on purpose and knowing that they're lying, and I do think there are some people out there who do that. Not many, but I know that it's out there. In general, anyone who's on the internet, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, if you're just talking about and theorizing and analyzing the situation that Nintendo's in with their business, it's totally okay, in my opinion. I'm not telling you how to feel this way, but in my opinion, it's totally okay for people to just discuss the idea of next Nintendo hardware. We've been doing it for decades. Anyone who's too young out there to have experienced it doesn't really know, but I'm telling you with my real life experience, and other people who are my age will corroborate this, we've been doing it for decades. Whether it's a new Sega console, whether it's a new Nintendo console, whether it's a new PlayStation, whether it's the first time Microsoft is going to enter the ring with an Xbox, we've been excited for and theorizing about new hardware and new power for decades. In the current climate right now, we're obviously dealing with a lot of stories that go around and people claiming to know things and things that are leaks or things that are rumors and things that may be true and things that may not be true. And obviously we have to carefully navigate, at least people in a position like mine, where we kind of talk about this stuff. We have to carefully navigate how we present it. And so when something like the Pokemon story comes out where somebody was on 4chan and they made a post about the Pokemon Direct thing and they got all that information correct, and then they said maybe there's new Switch models coming out with DLC pack number 2 and a graphics enhancement, I made my own video talking about that. I think it's important to say, hey, this person may have been translated incorrectly and maybe we're reading into it wrong. They clearly knew stuff about the Pokemon show, and I didn't watch it because I'm not a Pokemon fan, but I know that everything they said was accurate. So that's a big deal. So we look at that statement about them saying that, we're working on a graphics enhancement for new Switch models. It definitely sounds like they could be talking about next generation Switch hardware, but it's not for sure. So it's all about how people approach it. Do they say it's a leak and it's confirmed based on this? Or do they say, let's talk about it and analyze, it might be true, it might not be true, here are my opinions on what it might mean, and then they discuss from there. That's the kind of stuff that almost every content creator I know and watch and follow does. And again, whether you're doing it on a platform like YouTube or a platform like Twitter or wherever you might be doing it, that stuff is normal. It's harmless. And if you're somebody who finds yourself getting upset at people talking about it, I think you just might need to relax a little bit and say, am I somebody who's actively seeking out content and conversations that make me upset and then getting mad at people for having them? Because if you are, then you might not be approaching your time on the internet in the most responsible or healthy way. Just my opinion. I'm no one's therapist. I'm no one's dad. I'm just saying, be kind to yourself. Don't seek out the stuff that makes you mad when people are just harmlessly talking about and theorizing about stories about Nintendo Switch 2 that are going around. And sure, I'm biased because I obviously do it myself, but I feel pretty confident saying I approach it in a healthy, responsible way. And so again, I'm not trying to be the internet dad and the YouTube dad or YouTube police, all right? That's not the point of this. I'm just one guy out of hundreds and thousands of other guys and girls out there doing the same thing, talking about video game stuff and news and theorizing and Nintendo conversations. And yeah, look, man, I love the Switch, but I'm very excited for when they make another jump into something else. I hope it's impressive. I hope it's the right call. I hope it's an exciting piece of hardware and exciting decisions they're making with whatever the controllers are and whatever the console does and how much more power is added to it or whatever. If it turns out to just be a pro thing that improves resolution and frame rate but doesn't give a jump in power enough to create exclusive games that can't play on the current Switch, I mean, I'll analyze it at the time, so I don't want to speak out of turn and end up having to backpedal, but the concept in the right here and now does not excite me, right? So that's just how I feel, and so I just want to say, what am I even trying to say here, right? I feel like I've been rambling like I do in all of my videos. I'm just a rambling guy with a YouTube channel. I think all I'm trying to say is, obviously, in my opinion, I think it's okay for everyone who's out there doing it to talk about Nintendo Switch 2 stuff. I can't think of a single person, really, I don't think off the top of my head, that's purposely lying and trying to get people messed up, I mean, the Jeff Grubb thing just happened, and I made a video talking about it because I understood his comments to be about something that he was claiming he had heard. And the clip definitely seemed like that was what he was saying, and a lot of sites kind of reported it that way. He did later clarify that he said he was more predicting than stating something he heard. I don't know if that's really true, but it is what he said, and so, I added a clarification comment on that video. But that's not purposely lying. I don't think Jeff Grubb is purposely lying. I sure as heck wasn't purposely lying. It's just covering stories that are out there. And all the fellow YouTubers who I know and people I've started to become friends with over the years who cover the same things, a lot of them talking about Switch 2 stories and speculation right now. It's fun. This is the fun side of gaming. If you find yourself getting fuming angry, volcanically rageful, and you see red when people just talk about the Switch 2, really determine, are they lying to you or are they just having fun conversation? Because, as people who like the gaming hobby, we like to talk about this stuff. Just analyze what it is. And if you find yourself watching stuff you don't like, then don't watch it. This is like Internet 101, but even 20 or 30 years into the internet, people still don't understand that, man. So anyway, now I am starting to sound like the internet police, and I don't want to. So I think I've said my piece. I like talking about Switch 2. I'm going to keep talking about Switch 2 for as long as it makes sense to do it until we have a Switch 2 in our hands. That's my plan. I'm going to try to be as responsible as I can. We're just having fun. No one's doing any damage to anyone or anything. So those are my thoughts. I'll be very curious to hear how you guys feel and react to this. I think some people will be upset. This might be a heavily downvoted video. I might get a lot of pushback and people yelling in the comments. And if you want to be mad about it, you certainly can. I knew what I was stepping into when I decided to make this conversation, but I thought it was important conversation to have. So I've enjoyed chatting about this with you guys. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll just see you next time on another video.